opportunity was the community court program, I immediately fell in love. And I'm not the only one to have said that. We have board members that they got their start with legal aid and got to know legal aid through community court as well. It's a fantastic program, and there's just, these participants just grab your heart more so than most of the clients that we see in legal aid, I think. But let me go ahead and start. Let's see. And I find, can you all see that?
Yep.
I find starting any boring presentation with a cute animal picture helps. This one actually does have some significance in that this is a holistic program. As attorneys, we're taught, whether we're drawn to the profession in the first place or we're taught it in law school, that we always have to act like we know what we're doing. The nice thing about community court is that you can sit back and say, I don't know as much as you want. We really rely on our social service partner experts, other attorneys that we might be volunteering with, our homeless organization partners, to really help us get these participants through this court process. See, and the quick agenda, what is community court, the logistics, what attorney consultations can look like, but honestly, you never know what you're going to get, and what happens after sentencing. So the community court program offers an alternative to traditional courts and the fines and fees they impose by providing a collaborative and accessible venue that brings together social service providers, legal professionals, and dedicated volunteers to holistically address the individualized needs of participants to reduce barriers to self-sufficiency. I just ran out of breath. But I think that pretty much encompasses everything. You'll find community courts, or more often referred to as homeless courts, all throughout the country, actually the world. But the beauty of them is that they grow organically within a particular community. So what ours looks like here in Marin may be very different than what is provided in the Tenderloin or in Austin, Texas. That it needs to respond to the community itself. There is no one size fits all. It's a collaborative court. It allows our Marin residents, homeless and low-income residents, to resolve infractions and parking tickets through community service or alternative sentencing. The purpose of community or homeless courts is to bring court to the community. That you're dealing with a population who has had terrible experiences, most likely with court, with judges, with law enforcement, and so we want to bring court to some place that they are far more comfortable in, and reduce that sort of trauma. Judge Wood, who is our volunteer judge, she sits on the dependency court here in Marin, but she actually gave a speech the other night and reminded us all, it's also an opportunity for our participants to get to know attorneys in possibly a very different way than they ever have had in the past. We attempt to address the criminalization of poverty. There's a paternalistic view about giving people often tickets that they shouldn't be getting in the first place. And on top of that, forcing them to do community service to get rid of those tickets. For example, I could zigzag my way across B Street in San Rafael and never receive a ticket. We know that law enforcement will target people that look unhoused for these kind of tickets, as well as smoking in public, dogs off leash. Another one that we see a lot, we call these lifestyle tickets, that really only our unhoused residents get. A jaywalking ticket in San Rafael is over $500. And so obviously it's not going to get paid. They're not going to even go to court to discuss this with a judge. So that's what community court addresses on the surface. But since we're, all with attorney friends here today, certainly we have the opportunity to identify participants and identify opportunities for advocacy in fines and fees. I work at the state level and trying to reduce and eliminate fines and fees. Locally, I try to work with law enforcement and our homeless organizations about alternatives to giving jaywalking tickets. So far, the response, unfortunately, is that we give jaywalking tickets so that they get connected to you at community court and get connected to services. So we have a long way to go, but we'll keep going. Removes barriers to self-sufficiency, not having a driver's license, having large fines and fees on your, for purposes of, they'll grab your taxes. If you do get a job, there'll be a wage garnishment. And also putting registration holds on your vehicle for unpaid parking tickets. That people usually come to us the first time because they didn't realize that they couldn't renew their driver's license, or they got pulled over and didn't realize their driver's license was suspended, as well as trying to renew their registration and seeing that there's hundreds of dollars of fines on there that they're going to have to pay in order to get the registration. No car means no employment, can't take your kids to school. And it really starts that people are having to choose, do I pay my rent or do I pay my car registration in these parking tickets, for example? And either choice is putting them further into poverty. And it does, to a certain extent, it does provide an opportunity to expand that safety net of services. We're always trying to look at it. It's never just a ticket. It's never just a speeding ticket. It's never just a jaywalking ticket. I've talked to participants that will have 3 speeding tickets, and they'll say, well, I have this onerous family law order, and I don't know how to get it changed, and it's hard for me to get to pick up the kids from work on time, and if I don't, it causes all these problems. So a referral to a family attorney at that point might help. Logistics, it's always the second Tuesday of the month. We are currently remote, although I'll go in person to St. Vincent's dining room for those that cannot access, that don't have the technology to access Zoom. And some people just like to do it in person. St. Vincent's in particular, pre-pandemic, it was the place to be for breakfast and lunch. You could charge your phone, obviously get food, get access to your case managers or therapists, social workers. And so it's a place that our unhoused population really feels comfortable. And so a lot of them will still come see me at St. Vincent's. And it's 2 Zoom calls unfortunately, the judge insists on holding our own, but we're in charge of the attorney consultations. And usually the Zoom info will come out the morning of court. It just depends on when the judge is able to set it up and get it out. Certainly we do everything we can to keep pro bonos happy and accommodated. We know schedules are tough, but it's not always possible. The judge kind of, runs the show. Sometimes she'll ask me, Lucy, who wants to go first today? But sometimes she just starts calling out people's names and you have to sort of pay attention. Is that my client? She does try to go with, we'll start with one attorney and see all that attorney's participants first, and then go to the next attorney. But you never know. So far, since we've gone remote, we've gone from where a normal in-person court would be 50 plus people. Since we've gone remote, it's been anywhere from 12 to 20. Although tomorrow, this community court is looking like we're up to about 40. And so up until now, we've been able to get out usually at the latest 5 p.m., but I don't know how it's going to go as more and more, as we get more and more participants, along with all the other COVID related protections that are ending. Another thing that's ending is license. There was a moratorium on license suspensions during COVID. There was also a prohibition or moratorium on the franchise tax board yanking any money for unpaid tickets. That has ended, and so we're starting to see more people. And eligibility, really quick, probably not much of your concern, but everyone has to be low income. We'll talk more about this in a minute, but this is a post-conviction court. And so by virtue of coming to community court, you're automatically pleading guilty. And the participant has to have at least one infraction issued in Marin, but we try to help with if they have tickets in other parts of the state. None of this you have to necessarily worry about because we do all the vetting beforehand before you get assigned any participants. Not eligible. We don't see misdemeanors or DUIs. Fast track violations, we see many. Unfortunately, community court can't handle those. So what happens with a fast track violation is that if you fail to pay your $8, that quickly will go up to $80 within a couple months. And that gets tacked on to your registration, and you cannot renew your registration until you pay these violations. We all know there's huge problems with Fast Track. It's a private company that has, a quasi-government task in how it can attach a person's registration. We also know that they're incredibly flawed. And probably the mistakes are the norm, not the exception. So we try and help at Legal Aid. We try to help people with their fast track violations. And so if participants do have that issue, you can just say, community court cannot resolve this, but Legal Aid of Marin can. So make sure that they follow up with us. We can't deal with probation, parole violations, and felonies, but we do work closely with partner organizations, the public defender, and the DA, and we can serve as sort of an advocate role in trying to get people these kind of issues through the system. Community court, the judge likes to say this is not a get out of jail free pass, and she wants participants to feel as if this is their only opportunity, that's once they get their issues resolved in community court, they cannot come back. But we are always fighting for people to be able to come back. And sometimes we're successful, and what she's always looking for somebody to come back is what their story is. So yes, I was in community court 3 years ago. I was, in rehab and I couldn't finish, but now I'm back and I'm much better and I have a support system. I go to NA regularly. I have case managers, whatever it is. So, but we do try and on their, initial visit to community court, try and stress this is one time only. Let's try and avoid getting any more tickets. On court day, so the Zoom is set up by our community court coordinator, who is a technical master, thankfully, because I'm a complete idiot. And he is able to get everybody into breakout rooms so you can speak one-on-one with your assigned participant. And the first thing that pro bonos are asked to do is just to explain confidentiality and release of information. And certainly I can give you more on that, when you actually participate, but really it's the same old confidentiality speech that us attorneys give, that I will not share any of your information without your permission. But the information that you do give me today, I will share with the court and legal aid of Marin, and that's it. Reiterate that the participant is pleading guilty. Probably more often than not, the participant wants to argue their tickets, and that is one of Judge Wood's biggest pet peeves. So anything that we can do to keep the judge less irritated, the better. And so it's really important that we let the participants know we are not arguing the ticket. We are just trying to mitigate your sentence. If you really want to argue the ticket, then don't come to community court today. And you can connect them with me to figure out what our other options are to challenge the ticket. The next thing that you do, you'll see, so every court session has a docket with the participant's name, date of birth, and all the tickets that they have. This is created by our volunteer court clerk, who is just amazing. She is now retired, but she has been with Judge Wood for decades. And she has been with community court since the beginning 10 years ago. And so, it's interesting how these dockets read like a narrative. You can really read through them and see who's homeless. So you might have someone with 8 tickets and all of them are, you parked your bike incorrectly. And so you go over what tickets that participant has, and start getting their story. Why are you getting all these biking tickets? Like, well, I have been sleeping in Boyd Park. It's the only place I have to go. They've been harassing me. Or again, it could be, the speeding tickets or the, stop sign tickets. I really try to hear what the underlying issues are, for purposes of not only mitigating a sentence from Judge Wood, but also for referrals. We do provide a list, a Marin County list of referrals, as well as a huge list of places that a person can do community service. And then it's, again, you never know what it's going to look like, but when court time comes, we try and do more of the speaking for the participant. Certainly the judge will ask the participant directly some questions, But we really try to suggest and mitigate the sentence. So for example, I'll introduce my participant. This is Joe. He has been homeless for 6 years, but the great news is that he just received an emergency voucher and is looking for a place, as we speak. And he's really busy doing that. Is there some sort of alternative sentence that we can do instead of community service hours? So in that case, I might be able to talk Judge Wood into saying, okay, just give me, when you find a place to live, show me proof of that, and then I'll get rid of your fines and reinstate your license. There's also the opportunity to, some people just do not have time to do community service. So the judge will consider a donation in lieu of doing the service hours to St. Vincent de Paul or Legal Aid of Marin. I always suggest St. Vincent de Paul. They have been our partners from the beginning in this project, and they are completely unfunded. And so it's much appreciated. So usually I suggest St. Vincent de Paul. Of course, I'm a terrible salesperson and do not tell my ED. So
Lucy, is there an option to ask for extending the time in which you do community service, or what is the normal time period or hours of service they might have to ask, they might be asked to do?
That is a really good question. So normally how it works, Judge Wood wants people to be successful. She'll ask, okay, I'm going to give you 10 hours. How long do you think it'll take you? And usually the cutoff is that second Tuesday of the month. So she'll say, do you need 1 month, 2 months? But this is one of the few areas that she will defer to us. So for example, I had a client once that didn't have a driver's license and she was Spanish speaking, but she was illiterate even in Spanish. So for her to get her driver's license, which was required to complete her sentence, she needed to take classes in Spanish literacy. And so I was able to get a year for that. I always recommend with participants, hey, go ahead and request 2 months, but you can turn that in anytime. So if you finish your community service hours in 2 weeks, you can send it to us. We send it off to the judge, and they never have to come back to court again when she approves it. And that's it. And so I usually just recommend, a couple months is the norm, but that, let the participant know that they can turn it in at any time. If they end up needing an extension beyond that, then they'll need to, it's usually not a problem unless, we're talking about, unless they've asked multiple times for an extension. Usually the extension is fine. They just are going to have to ask for that on court day to the judge. We can't grant any extensions on our own. Did that answer your question?
Lucy, could you, I don't know if you're talking about this later in the presentation, but can you talk about the breakout rooms and how those are used?
So yeah, Tomas, our community court coordinator, will establish as many breakout rooms as there are attorneys. So each attorney will be assigned a breakout room, and then Tomas passes participants in and out. Usually I'm available in the main room if you have any questions. And so, you can come out in and out freely of your breakout room to ask me questions. Lately, like for example, tomorrow we have 4 participants showing up to St. Vincent de Paul. when we were not remote, I never took any participants unless it was the end of the day and the attorney had to leave. But as far as the initial consultations, I was always available for answering any questions. However, now that we're remote, although this would be a great opportunity if any of you are interested, that anybody that shows up at St. Vincent de Paul, I'll take those cases. So I'm not, it's a little bit harder for me to be available to answer questions, but certainly we'll figure it out. And then finally, we just ask that brief notes are emailed to us at the end of the day or the next day. And I'm talking about a couple of sentences. It does not have to be a novel or anything. And that's just something that we cut and paste and put in our online database, client database. And then, again, the sooner the participant completes their sentence, the sooner that they will get that suspension lifted or the registration hold lifted, and those fines completely eliminated. So, Tomas and I, throughout the month, will be checking in with participants to see how they're doing and if they're able to connect to community service, or if they're having trouble, then we try and connect them ourselves. Just depends. And then, this is sort of a subject of contention amongst all of us fines and fees advocates. But essentially the law is that upon first appearance, the suspension of that license needs to be lifted. There's been a lot of litigation around this. And we are winning that litigation, and I say we, but it's a royal we. I actually have nothing to do with it, but I won't take a certain amount of credit. And so it's important that at this point, participants understand that at least in community court, they will not get their license back or the hold from their registration until they complete their sentence. And I mentioned cross-county referral packets. That's really not something that you have to worry about. When they have tickets in other counties, we try, and when they complete community court here, we try to reach out to that county to see if we can't use some of the community service hours or whatever they did here to get them to lift the suspension hold and clear their fines in that other county. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes not. It really just depends on the county. And then we ask participants, again, if they don't think they're going to complete their sentence in time, to reach out to us as soon as possible, and expect that they will have to speak to the judge on the next court date to request an extension. And that is it. So we'll get rid of this.